This is Mission Control Houston. Welcome to Space Station Live. It is Friday, November 1st, 2013. This is a live view inside the space station's flight control room here at the Johnson Space Center. This team here today is being led by Flight Director Emily Nelson. She's sitting there at the center console with a few leftover Halloween treats up there on the console in front of her, and sitting beside her is Hal Getzelman. He is today's Capcom, the voice of the team here up to the Expedition 37 crew. It's been a busy morning for the crew. They've had sort of an abbreviated schedule today. The Soyuz that brought up Fyodor Yurchikhin, Luca Parmitano, and Karen Nyberg to the station back in May has been docked with the Rassvet module. That is the Earth-facing port of the Russian segment, one of those Earth-facing ports. That Soyuz was moved over earlier this morning to the Zvezda service module. That actually took place in the early morning hours. It was undocked at 3:33 a.m. Central Time and redocked at 3:54 back there on Rassvet. So that is the new configuration of the space station. What this does is actually open up Rassvet for the upcoming crew of Mikhail Tyurin, Rick Mastracchio, and Koichi Wakata. That is where their Soyuz will dock and will stay up until they're ready to go home in May of 2014. So the crew today is actually going to bed here in about 30 minutes or so. They've pretty much wrapped up their daily activities, and then they will get back on their normal schedule by waking up at about 1 a.m. Central Time early tomorrow morning. As it turns out, Yurchikhin was at the helm of the last Soyuz relocation that took place back in June of 2010. When he took the Expedition 24 crew's Soyuz TMA-19 from Zvezda over to the newly installed Rassvet module, so basically did exactly the opposite that he did today. So he's pretty much become a master at this now. But that is where their Soyuz will stay on the back end of Zvezda until it's time for Yurchikhin, Parmitano, and Nyberg to come home. In just a few short days, they're due to undock and land on Sunday, November 10th, coming home after almost 6 months on board the International Space Station. Before the crew wrapped up their daily activities today, they did have some other items throughout the entire International Space Station to take care of. Mike Hopkins, Expedition 37 flight engineer, spent his morning setting up what's called the Advanced Biological Research System, or ABRS. This scientific device on board contains 2 temperature-controlled chambers that can be used to grow plants, microorganisms, and other insects and spiders. So he was getting that set up for future checkouts of the telemetry that's assigned to that. He also recharged some batteries for the upcoming session of SPHERES, which we talk about quite a bit on here. That stands for Synchronized Position, Hold, Engage, Reorient Experimental Satellites. These are small sort of droid-like satellites that float through the space station. There's different versions of these. This next experiment that he's going to be working on is called SPHERES Rings. So each of those SPHERE satellites will have a ring-shaped device around them that has a fairly complicated name, the Resonant Inductive Near-Field Generation System. That's what RINGS stands for. But what they do is they demonstrate how power can be transferred between satellites without actual physical contact. So that could play into future satellite design. And that's what these little SPHERE satellites do. They sort of fly around in formation. They test out different maneuvers. There's been times when students on the ground have been able to actually program some of the maneuvers that SPHERES have undergone. But the Spheres Rings experiment will take place coming up in the next few weeks. And if you want to learn more about it, just log on to the NASA website, nasa.gov/station. And look on the left-hand side. You can click on Research and Technology. And you can look up the experiment by name or by expedition. So just take a look at Spheres Rings to learn more about it and the scientists that are behind that research.
Moscow Station, Space to Ground 1. Further, go ahead.
Саша, я смотрел все радиограммы.
Sasha, I'm looking at the radiograms, and they should all be on board.
Хорошо.
By what I can tell.
Давай тогда с тобой итоги подведем.
Okay. So why don't we tag up then and verify that you have all the radiograms we uplinked? Sure, let's do that.
С чего начнем? С формы 14
So would you like to start with verifying Form 14? I'm not going to tell you anything about physical exercise today. I guess you would infer why. And radiogram 3898, Form 14, verifying Form 14.
Время СКД 22 11 45 23 48 41 01 28 19 02 40 44 04 18 55 05 55 48 07 32 43 08 57 49 10 34 23 12 11 18 13 44 12 15 18 59 16 50 42 18 09 44 19 46 54 21 23 31 23 00 20. Конец радиограммы.
And that's the end of the radiogram.
Все верно.
And those are all good times.
Ноября уже сверено.
Then we'll consider Form 14 for November 2nd verified. Right, and we have the following radiograms on board. 3886, that's Form 24 for the 2nd of November, final Form 24. And then 3898, 99, 900, 3901, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and the last one is 3912. Right, and you should also have the ballistics file 30. That's right, and I can confirm we have ballistics file.
Так, Федор, какие у меня вопросы?
All right, Feather. What's the pressure on the pressure gauge, please? 763.
Так, хорошо. По работам, которые запланированы,
Okay, now for the activities, air duct installation, is that complete? Affirmative.
Хорошо.
Very good.
БНП номер 19 перенесли?
BNP number 19, did you move it into the service vehicle? Yes, we did. I already told you that, along with the red book and the gas masks, IPK. And the IMS already shows the updates. Very good. And for suit drying and stowage. Everything's stowed. So that's all complete. That's correct.
И вопрос еще по дополнительным работам.
And one more question on the task list activities.
Ничего.
Not one.
Ни у кого сегодня ничего, да?
So no one did anything today for task list? That's correct.
Так, в рамках там ТОСОЖ, то есть какие-нибудь...
Okay, and then you SOJ, maintenance, anything?
Все, по-моему, сделали все, что можно поменять. Если не сделали что-то в базе, точно...
I'm not aware of any changes, but if anything was changed out or replaced, I'm sure that they updated IMS with that information.
Сегодня там работы...
Okay, copy. And for sample collection, I understand those were all complete as well, what was on Sergey's timeline. That's right. And the samples collected are already stowed in a CTB that will be returned. Excellent. That's good news.
В принципе, у меня все. Больше к вам вопросов.
I think that's all on my list of topics I wanted to discuss with you. Do you have any questions or requests for me?
ЦУП Москвы есть какие-нибудь вопросы?
Fedor, do you have any questions for MCC Moscow? How do you read?
Я говорю, у нас есть...
Moscow, we do have questions.
Луки не проходил, мы не понимаем.
But it's probably a topic for debrief post-flight because for relocation questions, we don't understand why the command that was issued by Luca did not go through multiple times. And I also have some issues that I wanted to report on the hand controller operation. There were some glitches, and I wanted to discuss those, but it'll probably be after we come back, and I'll tag up with the instructors. Definitely. And Fedor, I probably will not talk to you until you get back, because my next on-console shift is going to be on the 12th, which will be, hopefully, after you land. So I hope to talk to you next when you're back home. Thank you very much for your work today, and good night, guys. Good night, Sasha.
This is Mission Control Houston, the crew on board the space station. They're talking with the Russian flight control team just outside of Moscow. As we talked about, they've had a busy morning today as the Soyuz was relocated from the Rassvet module over to the Zvezda service module. We have a moment here. We're going to take a look back at video highlights from this morning's early activities as the crew did move that vehicle from one side of the station to the other.
Confirmed. Physical separation confirmed at 3:33 a.m. Central Time, 12:33 p.m. Moscow time, as the International Space Station flew 262 statute miles over the South Atlantic Ocean, just south of the equator.
Obviously. Open. And L1 Rotoka command. Another one is ready. Copy the sending Rotoka command. The command has been sent. Luca. Copy that. Selecting A9 has been sent. A9 has been sent. Ready for the route command. And G5 command. We have depot B. B1. We have translation hand controller. We have OSK stabilization. LED illuminated. Copy all. Sending. Inaudible. We're seeing the crosshairs misaligning. Can you look at the docking note? Yep, we're seeing the. We're seeing the. Yeah, can you switch to the narrow angle? And the docking interface is clean. We're seeing it. Yes, we're seeing everything we should be seeing. All's nominal. 3 squares and one target's width.
Soyuz Commander Fyodor Yurchikhin reporting that the docking interface at the Rassvet module that the Soyuz just departed from is clean. That's good news for the next crew that will be arriving to link up to Rassvet just 6 days from now. A good view of the Soyuz as Yurchikhin at the controls of the Soyuz and the descent module in the center seat, flanked on his left by Luca Parmitano and Karen Nyberg on his right. Begin this maneuver to back away to a distance of about 180 meters, where the Soyuz will begin a short period of station keeping. It should take about 5 minutes for this back out procedure to be completed and set the stage for an initial check of the Soyuz systems before Yurchikhin begins to fly around to the aft end of the Zvezda service module.
Copy. As far as the width of the docking interface, we're about 3 cells, 3 squares. See? Finished adjusting roll.
Хорошо.
Standing by, on, ready to send the command on your go. Okay, copy, Luca.
Находимся четко над стыковочным узлом.
We're right above the docking interface. Copy.
Стыковочный узел чистый.
Docking interface is clean.
И продолжаем расхождение.
Continuing separation. Copy.
Две с половиной клетки по ширине стыковочного узла.
About 2.5 squares as far as the width of the docking interface is our position. Copy that.
6 метров.
6 meters. Yep, just a little bit more and we'll be good to go. Inaudible.
Две с небольшим клетки по ширине.
About 2.5 squares along the width of the interface. About a little less than 30 meters.
Your Chicken is currently providing Russian flight controllers with a blow-by-blow description of his view of the docking port at the Rassvet module that he just departed from. This view shows the Neptune control panel on the cockpit of the Soyuz spacecraft, and in the upper left-hand corner, that cross-haired view is the engineering view of data that is being provided back to the Russian flight control team here in Kornyov for situational awareness about the position of the Soyuz and the condition of its systems.
R7 has been sent. We're going to go past the DC. Can you tell me what the range? Yes, we're monitoring the range. About half a cell along the target have just sent the R7 command. R8. Above the sending the inaudible 12 command. Illuminated already. Continuing flyabout. Olymp 2. Olymp 12 is on. Sending the command. Copy. Are we go to send the command? Yes, you go. You go, Luca. Sending. 6 squares along the diameter of the SM, approaching the SM aft. Approaching the edge of the SM aft. Moscow, Luca.
Your Chicken continues to slowly press in.
How do you read me?
Everything going normally.
Standing by for contact. The target is at the center of the crosshairs. The crosshairs are aligned. Copy that. We have contact. We have capture.
Contact and capture. Docking confirmed. The International Space Station now in free drift. Thrusters are disabled for the moment. Docking confirmed at 3:54 a.m. Central Time as the International Space Station and the Soyuz vehicle flew 262 miles over southern Russia near the border with the Ukraine.
This is Mission Control Houston. Again, that was a look at this morning's activities as Fyodor Yurchikhin, Karen Nyberg, and Luca Parmitano crawled inside their Soyuz and undocked from the space station and spent about 20 minutes or so moving over from one part of the Russian segment to the other. Their Soyuz had been docked with the Rassvet module, which is sort of in the middle of the Russian segment facing down toward Earth. They did move that over to the Zvezda service module, which is back at the back of the Russian segment. That particular Zvezda port was vacated several days ago whenever the European automated transfer vehicle, which had been docked there for several months, did undock. That ATV is due to be deorbited and burned up in the Earth's atmosphere tomorrow. But they moved over just to make way for the upcoming crew of Mikhail Chirin, Rick Mastracchio, and Koichi Wakata. They're going to be heading up to the station on November 6th. They'll be docking the morning of the 7th, and that is where their Soyuz will go. But there is the crew that's going to be coming up. They're going to be part of Expedition 38. That 38 will begin at the moment that Nyberg, Parmitano, and Yurchikhin actually undock from the station. That is how we demarcate expedition to expedition. But we're going to have 3 Soyuzes actually docked with the station at one time and 9 people on board, which is the first time that has happened since 2009. This is Mission Control Houston. We want to take a look at our programming coverage coming up beginning November 6th as Rick Mastracchio, Koichi Wakata, and Mikhail Turin get ready to head up to the International Space Station. In terms of our television programming, we'll begin on November 6th at 9:15 p.m. Central Time. That's when we'll have launch coverage. The actual launch itself will be at 10:14 p.m. Central Time. And the early morning hours of November 7th, that is when we'll have docking coverage beginning at 3:45 a.m. Central Time. The actual Soyuz docking will take place at 4:31 a.m. Central, and then we'll be back at 6:15 that morning with hatch opening coverage, with the actual hatch opening taking place at 6:40. And then if you missed any of it, just tune in at 8 a.m. Central Time. That's when we'll have a video file with all the different highlights of the night's activities. And then on November 10th, we'll bring you live coverage of the landing of Karen Nyberg, Luca Parmitano, and Fyodor Yurchikhin as they get ready to wrap up about 6 months up in space and come back home to Earth. There's a look at the crew there. Our programming on NASA television will begin on Sunday, November 10th at 1:30 p.m. Central Time. That's when we'll have hatch closure coverage as they say farewell to the space station itself and their fellow crew members. The actual hatch closure will take place at 2 p.m. Central Time. Undocking coverage begins at 5, with the actual undocking taking place at 5:26. Landing coverage will begin at 7:30 that evening Central Time, with the actual deorbit burn at 7:56. And then the actual Soyuz landing will take place at 8:50 p.m. Central Time. Then we'll have a video file that day at 9:30 a.m. Central Time with all the different highlights of what happened the night before. Now, once Nyberg, Parmitano, and Yurchikhin undock, that'll signal the end of Expedition 37 and the beginning of Expedition 38. This crew is going to have an extremely busy time ahead on board the International Space Station. Now, to take a look at what's ahead, we're going to look at the mission overview here on NASA television.
The next crew handover on board the International Space Station is going to be a first of its kind. Since the end of crew transfers using the space shuttle, one of the station's 3-person Soyuz crews has departed and left the other trio alone on board for a few weeks until the next group arrived. But not this time.
As Karen Nyberg, Luca Parmitano, and Fyodor Yurchikhin, they won't depart before the next crew arrives because that next crew is bringing up the Olympic torch.
We're going to be handing that Olympic torch to the Soyuz 36 crew, who will take it out on a spacewalk 2 days after we arrive.
That's not the only EVA task. There are jobs to be done to prepare for the upcoming arrival of the new Russian multipurpose laboratory module, too.
As you know, the new module is going to arrive to the station pretty soon, and the Russian segment has to be ready for that. So we need to replace a couple of antenna hardware, we need to reconfigure COM cables outside the station. So these are the main tasks.
But the highlight of the spacewalk will be the activities with the torch.
They will then hand it to the Soyuz 35 crew, who will then fly that Olympic torch back to Russia. So it's kind of like our own little relay going on up there.
Olympic Games is an event that people from all over the world get together in one place and extend friendship through sportsmanship and excellence in sports. So it really fits our vision and goal of International Space Station.
That goal is to conduct science research that's not possible on Earth, and to learn what it will take to protect the human explorers who will make voyages of discovery beyond low Earth orbit in the years to come.
We need such flights to understand how to make a long-term existence of a human being in space safer.
So the crew members are test subjects for dozens of experiments to quantify the physical effects and test countermeasures to reduce or reverse those effects. For example, scientists are working to find out if certain foods can stop the loss of bone mass.
That's where we're looking at the ratio between animal proteins and potassium and how that affects bone loss. And so the idea is that if we can figure out what that right ratio is, we might be able to minimize the bone loss through just nutrition.
We will be measuring our physiological data related to the changes in the eye and the brain due to the change in the intracranial pressure in the microgravity. And by consistently gaining or measuring this kind of physiological data on our eyes and brain, we will be able to find out exactly what other causes are for the eyesight change in flight.
For another example, the research isn't just on the physical effects of being in space, though. There are experiments on the psychological ones, too, which could have applications here on Earth.
But if we're studying psychological aspects, they can be used not just in space exploration, but can be propagated and applied to human relations in general, and are much more in demand in various areas of our human activity, human life.
The station is also home to science in other disciplines, which are taking advantage of the unique environment in low Earth orbit.
For example, there's MAXI, which is looking at cosmic X-rays, and they've had some very interesting results. In fact, I think they were able to help detect a black hole shredding a star, and so that's just fascinating.
If we grow crystal on board the station, the crystal will be of perfect shape. Crystals are used in the laser industry, in pharmacology, and huge protein molecules, which are very important in healthcare.
We're also looking at how pathogens interact with cells in a micro-G environment. And then on the other side of that, we have experiments where we're looking at how things burn, how things combust in space, so we can better understand why things ignite, how things burn, and then better understand how to keep materials from burning in whatever the situation may be.
Station crew members will attend to a whole range of science experiments during their stay on board. They've also trained for planned and potential spacewalks, and to receive shipments of supplies in a variety of cargo vehicles. By February, they'll be ready to watch some of another international gathering, the Winter Olympics in the Russian city of Sochi.
These two projects are devoted to the improvement of the communication, interaction, cooperation, people, different countries, different cultures. That is why the Olympic Games and the station are very much alike in this sense.
Expedition 38 gives way to Expedition 39 when Kotov and his Soyuz crew return to Earth in March, and Wakata takes over, the first Japanese astronaut ever to command the International Space Station.
Japan is very happy to have this opportunity to have ISS commander from the Japanese Astronaut Corps. It's a big challenge for me, and I'm just fortunate to be able to learn a lot from my previous ISS commanders and shuttle commanders.
Wakata's crew will grow by 3 when another Soyuz arrives a few weeks later, carrying NASA astronaut Steve Swanson and Russian cosmonauts Alexander Skvortsov and Oleg Artemyev. Those 6 crew members will work together until Wakata, Turin, and Mastrakio head home in May, having made their contribution to achieving a dream of humankind.
We want to go out and see what's out there. We want to know more about things, and we can't just do that through robotic systems. We have to send people to see things up close and personal. So I think it's very, very important to get folks into low Earth orbit. It's very, very important to get folks beyond low Earth orbit. And this is just one small step in that long, long journey.
This is Mission Control Houston. Again, that's a look at what's ahead as these next few weeks promise to be incredibly busy for the crew on board the space station. Expedition 37 transitions to Expedition 38, and then that crew has several tasks ahead of them. But first up is going to be this launch of Rick Mastrakio, Koichi Wakata, and Mikhail Turin as they become a 9-member crew on board the space station for just a few days. There's a spacewalk planned for November 9th, as that Olympic torch that's coming up with that crew will be taking outside the station, and then it's going to be packed inside the Soyuz with Fyodor Yurchikhin, Luca Parmitano, and Karen Nyberg as they get ready to come home on Sunday, November 10th. Hi, everybody. Josh Byerly here inside Mission Control. I'm joined by astronaut Chris Cassidy. Chris has been back for about 6 weeks or so now. Got back in September.
Exactly.
So, Chris, first of all, welcome back. Talk
Thank
about
you.
how's the gravity treating you so far?
You know, the readaptation's gone pretty well. In fact, after my shuttle experience, I had kind of tingly feet. 2 weeks, pretty fast amount of time to be in space, but I didn't exercise much. So I was anticipating that and more coming back on station, and I got back here. And because of the T2 machine and the ARED exercise bikes, machines that we have up there, I felt fantastic. Didn't have any tingly feet, was able to walk. Really felt great.
It's amazing how different it is, probably going up there about 2 weeks and then, you know, almost 6 months up on board the space station. Talk about the differences between those two.
Yeah, so, well, the one thing I didn't expect was sort of this feeling of ownership, like it was my home on the space station. Whereas when I went to the space station on the shuttle, I was a shuttle crew member. I ate and slept and went to the bathroom on the shuttle and went over to the space station to use the facilities and go do spacewalks and robotics and this sort of thing. But it wasn't my home.
Yeah.
And then to be there now for 6 months, it really, truly felt like home. If you're in your own house and you put a new audio-visual equipment in your living room, you take care where you route the cables because you don't want ugly cables in your family room. And that's the kind of feeling that we have, you know, when you're there that long. You put a new computer somewhere, you make the cables perfect so you're not tripping over the wires and that sort of thing. Really neat feeling.
Let's talk about the crew that's about to go up. You've got Rick and Koichi and Mikhail about to head up here in just a few short days. November 6th, they're going to launch. You guys were the first crew to actually go up there in one day, right? Usually it takes about 2 days to get up to the space station. You guys did it pretty fast. Was there a difference? I mean, did it feel weird going up there within 6 hours or what?
You know, I never did a Soyuz mission before the previous way, so what I knew is what happened.
That's what it was.
And it was very comfortable. I enjoyed having my first night on space station be in a real bed, you know, so to speak. A real toilet, a real selection of food.
Yeah.
That was a really nice feeling to have all those creature comforts on that first night. And the Soyuz is a really small little vehicle, and we were in it for 6 hours, but it went by so fast because there's a lot of activities that you have to do preparing for different maneuvers and things as you lead up to the rendezvous. So it went by in a split second.
So talk about what they're doing right now down in Baikonur. They went down, I guess, a few days ago, and that really is kind of it for them. They're about to go through the final preps for launch and head out to the rocket, and they're going to be on their way. So what's it like mentally to finally kind of get down to the launch site and get ready to go?
So there's a lot of pre-flight exams and hoopla that happens in Star City, and you get that past you, and you get on the plane and you go to Baikonur, and it's a very calm feeling. It's a slow pace. You're there for 2 weeks. In the beginning, there's not much. It's wake up, a little bit of Groundhog Day every day. You wake up, you work out, you eat, you work out again if you want to read books and do a few classes here and there, but it's pretty slow paced. And then you get to this event called the second fit check, where it's about, I don't know, 3 or 4 days from launch, and after that the ball starts rolling really quickly. You have you feel the excitement as launch is only a handful of days away. Your family and friends come into town and you see them, and the excitement really builds. And I think that's about the point where they are now. Leading up to that, people are coming and visit them, and I remember that same feeling for me, really ratcheting up the excitement and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, this is really going to happen. We're really going to go, and yeah, it's a neat feeling.
So let's talk about the other crew, Karen and Luca and Fyodor. They're getting ready to come home. So what is it like at the end of all that to kind of realize, oh my gosh, this is actually kind of coming to an end, and I'm about to wrap this up?
Yeah, it's a strange feeling. It's one, you think about going home because you want to see your friends and family, but yet it's a really cool place to be, and you never know if it's your last time you're ever going to have that opportunity to be up there. So there's a kind of mixed feelings, there's mixed emotions of how you want to proceed in those last few weeks. But in a nutshell, you're just doing your daily tasks and preparing things. Like, for instance, I was making sure that Mike Hopkins was going to have everything that I thought, oh, well, I had a belt. Does Hopkins have a belt? I'm going to leave him my belt. No, stupid thing, little things like that kind of prepare you. And then I also remember, this sounds pretty trivial, but the excess clothing that I had, socks, underwear, T-shirts, that I knew I wouldn't need. Once I got inside a couple of days, 5 days from going home, I knew I wouldn't need all that stuff. So I threw it away. And that simple act sort of shifted my focus of, okay, I'm on space station, to, all right, I'm really going home now. And I got kind of excited to go home. I was sad to leave. You know, I really enjoyed my time with Karen and Luca and being on space station, but it was a neat time, exciting feeling to get headed home.
Yeah. Last question. What was kind of the biggest surprise that you didn't really anticipate, that you got up there and you're kind of like, wow, I didn't really expect this?
Yeah, I'm asked that often, and it's a tough question to answer because there's so many different ways. You know, I touched on that sense of pride of ownership of the space station. That was one little unexpected aspect of it. But I'd seen the Earth before from the space shuttle and the space station, but I never had seen the cupola.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably one of the most surprising things, is just how magnificent the cupola views are, and you can just get lost up there for hours and sit there and look out the window and really take in the beauty of the planet as it goes by underneath us. So that's probably the biggest thing, was just the magnificent beauty of the cupola.
Appreciate it, Chris.
Yeah.
If you'd like to learn more about all of our programming that's ahead, as we bring you live coverage of this launch and this landing, we're kind of doing it in backwards order. Typically, we have a landing and then a launch. But this is going to be a busy few weeks for the crew on board the space station. But to find out when we're going to be covering it here on NASA TV, just log on to nasa.gov/station. Thanks again, Chris.
Yep, my pleasure.
This is Mission Control Houston. The Expedition 37 crew has had quite a busy week over the past few days. It all began on Monday as the Albert Einstein Automated Transfer Vehicle 4, that's ATV-4, undocked from the aft port of the Zvezda service module. The departure of ATV-4 ends 4 months linked to the complex and the delivery of more than 7 tons of food, fuel, and supplies for the station's residents. Undocking took place on Monday at 3:55 a.m. Central Time. That vehicle will be deorbited and burned up in the atmosphere on Saturday morning this weekend, and that will end its mission up to the International Space Station. Also on Monday, Mike Hopkins, while all this was taking place, took part in the spinal ultrasound experiment. This is one of the human research experiments that the crew participates in. It uses ultrasound technology to take measurements of the crew member's spine. The goal of the experiment is to help determine and better predict changes that happen to the spine on orbit. The crews sometimes get a little bit taller while they're up there, and that tends to increase the lower back pain and other things that they may suffer through, but they've seen up to a 3% increase in height while they're up in space. So in order to better predict that, this spinal ultrasound takes a look at their spines and their anatomy just to figure out if they can better predict who might go through those changes and who might not, just based on their body type. On Wednesday, Oleg Kotov and Sergei Ryazanskiy worked in the Russian segment to set up and resize the Russian Orlan spacesuits that they will use on the November 9th spacewalk. They're going to be stepping outside with the Olympic torch in a ceremonial spacewalk. Of course, we'll have live coverage of that here on NASA television. That spacewalk will begin at 8:30 a.m. Central Time, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Hopkins also worked with what's known as the SLAM-D device. This stands for Space Linear Acceleration Mass Measurement Device, or SLAM-D for short. It follows Newton's second law of motion by having 2 springs generate a known force against a crew member, While they're mounted on an extension arm, this results in acceleration that can be used to calculate the subject's mass. So basically, it's a fairly complicated way for them to weigh themselves up in space. Of course, you can't really just step on a scale since there's no gravity up there, but this device is accurate to 0.5 pounds and has a range from 90 pounds up to 240 pounds, so it takes care of pretty much everybody. But again, they weigh themselves periodically throughout their expedition on board the station, and it just helps the scientists on the ground monitor their health. Nyberg spent the day on Wednesday retrieving some samples from the Melfi. This is the minus 80-degree laboratory freezer for ISS. It's a giant refrigerator and freezer that the crew stores samples. There's different drawers that are located there that are at different temperatures, and periodically they need to move them from one temperature to another and also prepare them for the return back to Earth as those samples come back for scientists to take a look at. Mike Hopkins also worked with what's known as the reversible figures experiment. This takes a look at how the crew members actually see three-dimensional objects. They rely on different visual cues and perspectives while they're up there. The scientists and researchers have noticed that tends to change while they're up there. Their perspective tends to change while they're off the planet and in the absence of gravity for up to 6 months. So they basically take a test. They take a look at different images that are almost optical illusions like you've seen on the ground here, where if you look at it a certain way, you see one thing, and you sort of concentrate your eyes, you see a different thing. They do this. They've got a sort of a trigger in their hand, and they indicate using some buttons in their hand which image they're actually seeing. And by answering that test, the ground teams can kind of see what their eyes are seeing while they're up there. And that data is downlinked and helps better understand how those vision changes happen. And this morning, Friday morning, the Soyuz 35 was relocated from the Rassvet module over to the Zvezda service module by Fyodor Yurchikhin, Luca Parmitano, and Karen Nyberg. Undocking took place at 3:30 a.m. Central Time, and docking took place at 3:54 a.m. Central Time. The move of the Soyuz spacecraft clears the way for the arrival of the Soyuz 37 spacecraft with Rick Mastracchio of NASA, Mikhail Turin of Roscosmos, and Koichi Wakata of JAXA on board. Mastracchio, Turin, and Wakata are scheduled to launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan at 10:14 p.m. Central Time on November 6th. We've got a full day worth of coverage here on NASA television as we take a look at what's ahead in terms of our broadcast. Again, that launch time is at 10:14 p.m. Central Time on November 6th. We'll be bringing you live coverage of all those activities as this crew launches on that day, heads up to the space station. They got about 6 hours to get up there. Our launch coverage will begin at 9:15 p.m. Central Time. Again, the launch at 10:14. Docking coverage will begin at 3:45 a.m. on November 7th, with the actual docking taking place at 4:31. Hatch opening will begin at 6:15 a.m. Central Time, with the actual hatches being opened at 6:40. And then we'll have a video file at 8 a.m. Central Time. A few days after that, on November 10th, as Fyodor Yurchikhin, Luca Parmitano, and Karen Nyberg get ready to come home, we've got a full day's worth of coverage as well. The farewell and hatch closure coverage begins at 1:30 p.m. Central Time. The actual hatch closure will take place at 2. Undocking coverage begins at 5 p.m. Central Time, with the undocking about 26 minutes later at 5:26. Landing coverage begins at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. The deorbit burn that will bring this crew back into Earth's atmosphere occurs at 7:56, and then actual landing takes place at 8:50 p.m. Central Time. That'll be 8:50 a.m. the next morning there in Kazakhstan, and then we'll have post-landing activities and a video file beginning at 9:30 a.m. Central Time here on NASA television. If you missed any of this, just log on to nasa.gov/station and take a look at what's ahead, as we have a very busy few weeks ahead with a lot of comings and goings on board the International Space Station. During her final days on board the space station, Karen Nyberg has been wrapping up some of the activities she brought up on board. Of course, the crew members always take up some personal items during their downtime. They don't have a whole lot of it, but whenever they do have time to sort of take a breath and not work, they look out the windows down at the planet below. Karen Nyberg herself brought up some sewing supplies. She's actually been assembling part of a quilt that will be put together back here on Earth. She sort of made the first panel for that quilt. And we aired some videos earlier this week as she talked about some of the difficulties of actually sewing in space and actually just cutting material. It's a little bit hard whenever you don't have something to pin it down on. But before her flight, Nyberg spoke with several people here on the ground and talked about some of the hobbies that she takes part in and what it means to her space flight as she got ready to head up to the space station for about 6 months.
You actually know how to sew?
Yes, I do. I've been sewing. My mom taught me to sew when I was probably 5 or 6 years old. In fact, I have a shirt, the very first shirt I ever made, which is tiny. And I look at it now and impressed that I was able to do that. But I distinctly remember, you know, my mom would be working outside and I'd come in the sewing machine and sew a little bit, have a question, run outside. Mom, how do you do this? So I've been sewing for a very long time.
So do you think you'd sew up on the station?
I did take some fabric with me in hopes. I like making quilts, and on my shuttle flight I did pack a couple little pieces of fabric that I took in. It was packed away, I never got it out, and so from that same allotment of fabric I brought a couple other pieces and some thread and needle, and I'm hoping to, you know, I'm used to my sewing machine and an iron, and so I'm not quite sure what I'll do with it, but hopefully I'll get it out and do a little bit of sewing in my free time. Just, it's relaxing to me. So, I mean, I would sew all day, every day if I could. I love it that much. And so I'm hoping to get a little bit of time.
Do you like the actual sewing, or do you like the
I like the creating. The creating. Yeah, I like to do applique make different cartoon pictures. I didn't want to say just pictures because that sounds like realistic pictures, and there are some quilts that are fantastic artwork, and I'm not at that level. But I love to create, and that's, I think, what it's mostly about.
Well, and I think you'll bring, you know, lots of quilters and people who sew with you. They'll be up there with you.
I hope so. I hope so. I would really like people to see that, you know, you can have a job like this, which is very technical, and still have hobbies that are not. Well, actually, sewing is kind of technical in a way. I say it's not, but it actually really is. But you know, just there are people that use both sides of their brains. And I also brought up with me a sketchbook. I've been drawing since I was also that age. I would never sit in front of the television with just sitting there watching TV. I always had a piece of paper and a pencil and was drawing or doodling or doing something. And I used to draw people all the time. I haven't really done that a lot, but I took some pencils up with me in a sketchbook, and I'm hoping to spend, again, some of my free time drawing more than I have been recently, like I used to when I was younger.
As we get ready to wrap up Space Station Live for today, we want to give you a special programming reminder that coming up later this afternoon at 2 p.m. Central Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll have a special video file from Kazakhstan as Expedition 38 crew members Koichi Wakata, Rick Mastracchio, and Mikhail Turin underwent some activities and preparations down there at the Baikonur Cosmodrome. So that will air live here on NASA TV at 2 p.m. Central Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So take a look at what the crew's been up to as they get ready to head toward this launch coming up on November 6th, again at 10:14 p.m. Central Time, 11:14 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, here's our coverage that we've got on the 6th and the 7th. Quite a bit of broadcast happening there. If you would like to stay tuned to the latest, just log on to nasa.gov/station, and we'll have all the different programming information there on that website. As we take a look at the cupola outside the International Space Station, it is orbiting just to the south of Australia, about to head up over the Pacific Ocean. We're going to wrap up our broadcast for today. The crew, as we mentioned at the top of the broadcast, is on an adjusted schedule for the rest of the day. They are already in their crew sleep period now. They will wake up at 1 a.m. Central Time to kick off their Saturday activities, and that will put them back on the normal schedule for the weekend. Up next on NASA television today will be today's video file at 11 a.m. Central Time, noon Eastern Time, taking a look at all the different activities around the agency. And then again at 2 p.m. Central Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time will be that special video file of Expedition 38 crew activities there in Kazakhstan as Rick Mastracchio, Sergei, Mikhail Tyurin, and Koichi Wakata get ready to launch to the International Space Station coming up on November the 6th. We'll see you back here on Monday.